Hi, I'm an addict. My name is Terry. Oh boy, I didn't know I was going to be the first one to share today or this afternoon. Fear of change. Mark asked me yesterday to share on this topic, and I knew I could relate with it because I just went through some real major changes in my life, career changes, move. I moved from one area to another. Um, and it was real fearful for me. I prayed about it because I knew I needed it in my recovery. And then when it happened, the fear set in. And I started manipulating the situation like any good addict does. And, anyways, I worked a lot with my higher power during this, and I asked for his guidance and what I was to do. And I grew up in a household that told me I was going to never be anything. So this opportunity, this job opportunity was something I never done, to become an office manager out of a factory. It was like, well, I can't do that, So the fear built and built and built. And uh, I've been on the job for 2 months now, and everything's okay. But the fear that I lived with, trying to figure out, was this the right move, and was this God's will for me, or was this my will trying to get out of an uncomfortable situation that I was in, was overpowering at first. I know when I first got to the program, I heard that I had to change everything, and I thought, oh my God, And then I realized that I needed to change everything, and it's been a real slow process for me. My it took me a year and a half before I completed a fifth step. And that's when the changes started, and I didn't even know they were going on in my life. Um, uh, I don't know. I'm kind of nervous all of a sudden. I know that the only thing I can change today is me, and I learned that here. Um, by coming to meetings and listening to other people. And I heard earlier today, um, when I focus on me, the rest of the world seems to be okay. So, anyways, I'm having a hard time sharing. So, you know what? If somebody else is here to share, I think I'd like to pass on.
Hi, I'm Kim and I'm an addict. This is awesome. I remember being up here last year. I feel you. Being the first speaker has got to be, but today I know something about the fear of change because I had that when I first came into recovery. And, when they said changing everything, that was like, I was all right. Only thing I thought I had to change was just using drugs, because I thought I was cool, I was like, ain't nothing wrong with me, it's got to be something wrong with y'all because y'all don't know me. So only thing I seen I had a problem with was using every day, and I just wanted to stop that, But when they say change everything, I was like, but they said one day at a time, one thing at a time, because you come in here trying to work on everything at one time, you make yourself insane, And I remember trying to do all that at the beginning, and that brought a lot of fear, trying to change everything that y'all said to change all at one time. I was trying, if I'm clean, I was trying to quit smoking. I didn't want to drink no more caffeine, and, I ain't want to lust no more, and I was like, oh, shoot, this is just too much work, An addict will drive themselves crazy trying to change all that in the first day of coming to a meeting. You can go insane. So my sponsor at that time had told me just keep it simple, just change one thing at a time, with one step at a time, showing up to a meeting, just learn how to stay clean and not use. The rest of it will fall in place, and once I kept coming back, I think it was somewhere in my first 30 days, it was like, hey, I started changing because I started like coming to the meetings and seeing y'all. Because at first, when I came to my first meeting, I was wondering why all these people in the room and they say they clean, but somebody got to be getting high. Now, like today, if I had just came in here and everything, my focus would have been on who getting high behind the cabins. You know what I'm saying? And where are they going? And I'm going to follow that group because I want to know if they getting high. That was my thought back then and stuff, So I was following people just to see where they was going after the meeting because they said they was going for coffee. But you couldn't tell me a room full of addicts somebody wasn't going to get high. So I didn't believe that concept. I had to follow the people that was going to get the coffee because somebody knew how to get the stuff. So the more I kept following the people to get the coffee, the more I learned how to stay clean. And all of a sudden, that fear of wanting to change my life and stay clean stopped. I had this new desire to keep coming back. And y'all talked about that. Y'all say you'll get a desire to want to stay clean and keep coming back. Well, that happened. I don't know when it happened, but it did, and I thank God that did happen for me at that time. Today, I still have fear of changing, like career changes and stuff, because it's different stuff that I want to do and everything, and that fear still comes in. And like now, I want to go back to school, but my fear is math. Because and I know some of y'all can relate, I ain't never been good at math. And my thing is going to sit there and listen to another teacher put all this stuff on the board that looks like Spanish to me, and but I need to go back to school in order to do the work that I need to do. But that fear is there, and I've been praying about that because I don't know how to get rid of that fear in order to get to the room to sit in the chair, to listen to the teacher. So I've been doing that footwork, just going to apply and looking for grants and stuff like that. But it was through y'all sharing that I got a desire now to go back to school. Because my fear was I ain't even want to think about going back to school. Today I can think about it without having a great fear sitting on me. And that change of I don't want to be the same person I used to be. Today I want a better life for myself. I don't have to live on check to check to check. Because today I don't have to have fear of having money. My thing was having too much money. Oh, if I have too much money, I might go back out. Or, that's what I used to think when I first came into recovery. If I make too much money, that means I might just take myself back out. Because every time I had too much of something, I always gave it up, or let it go, or go spend it. Everybody talking about somebody, they took it. Nah, I always gave this stuff away, Ain't nobody came and repossessed or nothing like that. I always gave it to the dope man or, So today, it's okay. I don't have a fear about making more money or making a better career or buying a house and stuff like that. But in order for me to do that, I got to get past the fear of going back to school and stuff. And that it's okay to be successful. Being successful was a big fear for me. I don't mind changing that today, changing who I was yesterday. I don't mind because sometimes I don't like being who I was yesterday. Now, if you got with me yesterday, I was sick. Today I thank God that he brought a new change in me today because I ain't the same person I was yesterday. And I ain't pissing all over today because I'm not in tomorrow. I'm right here. And I thank God for that. That was a change, just thinking about today and not all off into next week or what happened yesterday. Today I can focus on what's going on at this moment. I was just telling this section right there is a lot of my sponsees, and we all sponsee sisters, and they just growing and growing and growing. The family getting large. And I'm like, y'all just don't know. This year I'll have 18 years. And it's so good. It is so good to just see sponsees grow. And I love God using me to give knowledge to somebody else in order to give knowledge to somebody else. And when they take on somebody, that's just broadening the base. You know what I'm saying? Y'all said the greater the base, the higher the point of freedom. And I get freedom just watching them sponsor other people, So I don't know. Changing today, I have no fear about changing because I have some tools today, and it's not about me doing it by myself. Y'all are helping me. That's why they say we in front of the steps. I thank God I don't have to do this alone, that I finally found a place that I can come to, that I never have to be alone again, that I never have to go to the school by myself, that I never have to go to another funeral by myself. I never have to do this by myself anymore because I got y'all. And I can, all around the world, I don't care where I go, Narcotics Anonymous is strong. I can find my home anywhere in the United States. I got a home to come to. And I love this convention. We grow with love because that's the only way that we can keep what we have unless we give it away, is we got to do it in love. We got to give this away. God, this is a God-given program, and it's about our spirits working. And I thank God that he put it on them to even come up with that. We grow with love. We do. Because every time I nurture somebody with some love that somebody gave me, they going to nurture somebody with some love of a seed and plant that seed for somebody else to grow with some love, and they going to keep on planting. And sooner or later, we going to have a room full of love going on. I'm just glad to be here. I'm Kim, and I'm an addict.
I'm an addict called Stevie. I have a lot of fear of change today. And I'm going to bawl my eyes out. I know it. I have a lot going on in my life, but no more than anybody else. And the fear of change, helped me to bring me to my last relapse. I'm standing here today with 65 days clean. All right. And I'm grateful for that, but that's a very painful thing for me too. And I can't say it snuck up on me. It was a very conscious decision to use. But it was very much unlike any other relapse I've had in my life. I've been at this shit for 11 years. This is my third relapse. The other two were just one-nighters, I got right where I wanted to be, But this one went on for a couple months and definitely showed me how progressive this disease is. And really brought me back where I came from in a very short time. And I needed that. I needed to be reminded where I came from. And I've been working on this relapse for several years. And there's this, my new motto. I learned from a man years ago. He used to say this all the time, and he's in another fellowship. And I never heard what he fucking said. Never heard what he said until it was all done and over with. And all he ever used to say is, pay attention. Pay attention. And you know what? For years, I never paid attention. I never paid attention to what was going on in my marriage, what was going on in my family, what was going on in my recovery, what was going on in my workplace. I never paid attention, And that's what I'm trying to do today. Because the fear of change has brought me where I am today. There are so many areas of my life that I have been dissatisfied with. And rather than deal with them, I stuffed them. I became a workaholic. And I mean a workaholic. Because long as I was working, I didn't have time to deal with anything else. I've put on 35 pounds in the last few years. And, for years I've listened to people talk about overeating and binge eating and weight issues. And for the most part, I've let that go in one ear and out the other. And you know what? For the first time, thank you. For the first time in my life, I'm starting to understand what a serious problem that can be. You know? Because I hate myself for it. And since I've been going through this divorce, I'm eating myself to death. You know, my husband's lost 60 pounds and I've put on 15. You know? Fucker. I'm happy for him. I really am. He looks great. He looks great. You know, so that's an issue for me. I mean, it's just like the dope. You know, tomorrow I won't stuff my face. You know, and every fucking day I do it. Every day I do it. And, you know, my education, I got this wonderful interest-free loan for as long as I want it, up to 7 years. I never have to pay anything. Finish my education, I don't want to say self-taught, but at my own pace. No pressure, the kind of thing that I need, because I have a problem with authority. So I can do it myself on my own free will. And I have a job that allows me to do my schoolwork at work, so I don't have to take time out of my life. And I'm still not doing it, you know? And I'm very capable of it. I'm not dumb. But it's that need for failure that's built in, you know? So I'm unhappy with that in my life. The fear of change, because then there'll be expectations on me when I get another degree. You know, changes in my life as a result of this divorce. You know, he's my best friend. I don't want to lose that, but I'm the one who made the choice. How it's affecting my child, our family dynamics, my stepchildren, the whole thing. You know, and then the changes that are happening that I don't have control over. I was discussing this with a friend earlier today. The changes that are happening within my network of friends in recovery. You know, because my husband is also in recovery. And it's a very, very sad thing. You know, and it's something I never thought I'd have to go through. Is, Maxwell, leave, please. Go out, please. Is my husband and I are both in different phases right now through our situation. And I'm very happy for him that he's really able to express his feelings throughout this situation right now. Talking to everybody about everything, every emotion he's having. And I'm just the opposite right now. I haven't been able to talk about it at all, or have had the need. And the best way I can explain that is like when someone tells you someone has died and it doesn't sink in until you've gone to the funeral. That's where I am right now. None of this has sunk in. I'm not able to react or respond to it appropriately because it's not real for me yet. Not enough. And so all our network of friends have heard his side, but not my side. And unfortunately, they're forming opinions, and I'm being left in the dark based on that. You know, and I'm losing some of the people I need in this program, you know, because they're choosing sides, you know, and they're uneducated about the situation. They just know what they've been told, and that's a sad thing, because I need people in my life. And those are some of the changes that I'm fearful of. I'm fearful that those are going to be permanent changes and not just temporary based on ignorance, you know. So those are some of the fears that I'm going through, you know. Right now I'm not afraid that I'm not going to stay clean. I feel pretty good about that in my life today. You know, and I'm really, really glad to be here. I needed this. This is, you know, last year was my first year here, and, you know, it feels like being home right now, and that's a good thing, you know. So I'm hoping I can make this a tradition for myself. So thanks for letting me share.
Did the second speaker ever show up? We still have time. If the spirit moves someone else to come up and share. Want to draw numbers? All right, have fear of speaking.
Hi, family. I'm an addict. My name's Jim. Fear of change. When I first got into this fellowship, and I started reading and working the first step, I found one sentence in there that was very compelling and very important to me in my recovery. It said that we found we had to completely change our old ways of thinking or go back to using. You know, I found after I surrendered and accepted the fact that I'm an addict, that I'm powerless over drugs and over my addiction, that what I had to do was work on changing my old ways of thinking. You know, and change, that's not something that I was really interested in when I walked in these doors. And fear. When I got here, I had the fear of going to the penitentiary. I remember sitting in my first meeting, and I was looking at 20 years in the penitentiary at the time, and I'm listening to people share, and I remember after I left on my way home thinking, you know what, I'm just trying to stay out of the penitentiary. Them poor people, they got problems. You know? But real quickly, within a matter of days, I started relating, you know, and there was fear. I was fearful of going to the penitentiary. I was fearful of the change that I was going to have to go through. At the time, I was going through a divorce. My entire world, of course, had crumbled, and I was at a bottom. So, but prior to that, fear was something that I always fought. You know, I was a member of a motorcycle gang at one time in my life, and I didn't have fear of anything. I had a cute little cliche of my own that there was nothing that I couldn't shoot, fornicate, or fight. You know, I lived with a gun on my belt for years. I had an imprint on my side from where I carried a pistol. So fear wasn't something that I associated with my life. That was a weakness. But when I walked in these doors, I was fearful. Like I said, I was fearful of going to the penitentiary. I was fearful of what my life would be like without drugs. Because at that time, I had spent 25 years in active addiction without ever contemplating slowing down the usage of drugs, much less stopping. So I was fearful. But, you know, I was made to feel at home very quickly. Within a week, I found myself going to a meeting every day because I didn't know what else to do. Didn't have a clue what else to do. And people were telling me things would be all right. You know, I'm like, yeah, bullshit, I'm going to the penitentiary. You know, things ain't going to be all right. I'm just trying to tread water between now and the time I go. But as it turned out, you people were right. I didn't have to go to the penitentiary. It took over a year before things were finalized and all, and before my case came to conclusion, but I didn't have to go to the penitentiary. And then I was fearful of, now what do I do? Now what do I do? I beat that one. I was very, very fearful at that time. After I did 90 and 90, I was fearful of, what am I going to do? Am I going to start slipping away? You know, am I going to start being complacent? And then, like I said, after the year had went by, and I no longer had the fear of the judicial system on my back. Now what am I going to do? Will I go out and use again because I got over again? You know, so it's, you know, through the course of my recovery, there's been fear involved, and but I've overcome it, and I've overcome it with all of you people. It's been 5 years I've been coming here to Camp Mac, and you know, the first year I came here, I remember being fearful of this. I'm going with a group of people that I knew from my home group, but it's like I'm not really that tight with them. Now today they're my family, you know, but at that time it was like, what am I getting into? You know, I'm going to a place down in Indiana where I've never been before, don't know what to expect. You know, and now I can't wait. I'm every year, you know, I look forward to this. So I know fear to me is healthy. It motivates me. 4 weeks ago this morning, I was rushed to the hospital. I had a heart attack. 4 weeks ago this morning. You talk about being fearful. I was laying on this operating table, and I had time to think before they started this procedure, and I was awake. And I remember over the last year or two sharing at tables that the quote out of a movie, a Jack Nicholson movie, I think it was called As Good as It Gets. And some of you might be familiar with it, but he says to these patients that are obsessive compulsive, which he is, he says, what if this is as good as it gets? And he walks out of the room. So I've been sharing this for the last year or so that, you know what, if this is as good as it gets for me, I'm all right with that. I'm all right with that. I am happy with my life and my recovery today. I'm in love with myself and my fellow man, something that I never had before, love or compassion for another human being. So I'm all right. If this is as good as it gets, so I'm all right. So I've been sharing, like I said, at tables about that. Well, I'm laying on that operating table, and what came to my mind was, okay, Jim, what if this is as good as it gets? What if this is it? And I had to think about it. You know what? I've been telling people that I'm all right with it. You know what? I am. If this is what is intended for to happen in my life, so be it. So I was at peace with that. I was all right with that. And I remember them wanting to give me a shot of morphine, and me telling them no. and the doctor says, well, you don't have to worry. One shot's not going to make you an addict. And I started laughing. I says, too late. I says, I just don't, I'm already an addict. I says, I really don't want the morphine. I said, you got a bucket of cocaine around here? And they laughed at that, and they said, well, at least you've got a sense of humor. I said, yeah, what else can I have at this point? I gotta have a sense of humor. But that was how I was dealing with my fear, you know? And I got through that, you know? And it was amazing. I was wanting to share this morning at the workshop about love. It was amazing, the outpouring of love that I got from the fellowship, from my family, you know, in my home area. It was just amazing, the support and the love that I get, you know. So that helps me overcome fear, you know. I'm not fearful of what the future holds today, you know. If this is as good as it gets, I feel blessed. I really do. So that's all I got. Thanks.
Hi, family. I'm Bob. I'm at it. Hey, Bob. And like Jimmy, we went to different schools together. We wouldn't have been in the same room in those days. You know, there was not a lot of love between the two clubs. And, you know, the fear kept me away from you people for many, many years. You know, I saw all the love, but I was really scared of it. You know, because as a young person, I was taught that, you know, you're not supposed to show your emotions. You're not supposed to let people know how you feel, all that garbage that we're taught as a young person. And it kept me sick for many, many years. And to tell you the truth, when I came here, I thought you people were going to show me how to use successfully. And that was a rude awakening. You know, I came here because suicide was looking real good. You know, I was vice president of motorcycle club too, and you know, that fear of allowing people to know who you are out there kept me sick, because if I allowed you to know who I was, then you would find it as a weakness, and you know, you can't do that on the street. But coming in here and facing those fears and learning how to deal with emotions and feelings, and to learn how to love another human being. You know, I don't know what your cake recipe is. I just know what mine was, and it was just through a lot of painful experiences that I learned how to love another person. You know, I confused love and lust. You know, that the two words were synonymous in my vocabulary, and it was really about control. If you just did what I said, everything would be fine. Because I was a scared little kid. I didn't know how to show emotions. You know, we were taught at an early age, you know, if you want something to cry about, I'll give you something to cry about. And so, you know, I took that throughout life, and put that mask on so that you couldn't see who I really was, because the truth was I didn't know who I really was. It wasn't until I went through a lot of painful lessons around here, the breakup of a relationship and some other things that taught me, you know, there's no shortcuts. That the only way to do this is to dig into the steps, you know, to take a look. You know, there were a lot of suggestions by people who had been through what I was going through. They suggested that maybe, just maybe, you might seek some professional help. You know, and I have. I've been to 3 different therapists, because I don't know about your issues. My issues are deep-seated. And, you know, my 3 older brothers are all dead from this disease. You know, and, you know, those are the things that I wasn't willing to talk about. And I had to learn how to open up and talk about that stuff. You know, I was afraid that if I allowed you in, that you would kick me out of here. And this was the only train left running. You know, prisons didn't scare me anymore. Death didn't scare me anymore. It was living life that way that scared me. And the fear has become a motivating factor in my life today. Having gone through some things clean, I believe today that when I'm scared, it points to something that I need to look at in my program, something I'm lacking in. And going through it rather than running from it, which I'm very good at, when I get to the other side, that's called growth. And I don't always want to do that. I still want to run sometimes. You know, I'm still that little child inside that wants to take the easy way out. And when I do that, it just keeps coming back time after time after time in one fashion or another, you know, making that same mistake. And so I just continue to come around here and try and learn the lessons instead of running from them. And when I do that, I just get rewarded. You know, this is a wonderful place to be, a wonderful way to start the summer, you know, to see the familiar faces and hear the stories. You know, I was supposed to come down here yesterday, and what sticks out for me is, as far as fear goes, I had to interview a couple of people. I have a business up there in Detroit, and I don't like doing that, but I had to because we're short people. And I left the interviews, and I was driving back to my house, and I was on 94 and started getting lightheaded. You know, and I thought, uh-oh. You know, I had to pull over to the side, and I was thinking, like, you know, we've lost a lot of people lately. I'm not getting any younger, you know, and I thought, uh-oh, it's the big one, you know. And I stopped and got some water and some trail mix, and I thought maybe my sugar's low or something, and it made me think, you know, what if this is all there is, you know? And if it is, like Jimmy said, you know, I'm okay with it, because the last 8 years have been the best 8 years of my life. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And if you're new here, give it a chance. Thanks.
I'm an addict. My name's Mark. Fear of change. Ain't got to change nothing. Ain't got to do nothing. Don't come bitching to me when nothing works. You know, when that's one of the things we say around here. If nothing changes, nothing changes. And I didn't really know. I mean, I didn't understand nothing y'all was talking about. And when you started talking about if nothing changes, nothing changes, I could never really understand that. And I just kept coming back, because like Bob, I ain't got nowhere else to go. And today, I'm really okay with that. I am so grateful to Narcotics Anonymous, because I do have nowhere else to go. I have worked both programs. Thank God I never worked them together. But I spent many years in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I owe a deep debt to that fellowship. But just like, not that I am just like, but, you know, like what it says in the basic text about our fathers going and starting Narcotics Anonymous. When I came over here, I said, man, this is it. This is home. And I don't have to go anywhere else. And I'm so grateful for that. But this whole change thing, fear, you know, I don't know where I was. I was at a meeting somewhere, because I sure as hell didn't hear it at Kmart. But they said, fear, this kid, man, one of them straight out of the treatment center, you know, and here I sit with all my clean time and in all my glory, and I was in a mess that day, and this kid says, fear. Used to mean fuck everything and run. Now it means face everything and recover. Oh, wow. Don't tell me that, man. Don't tell me that. I don't want to hear that. How much time you got, boy? You know? Clean time don't equal recovery, all right? But if you think clean time ain't important, stick around and get some, all right? That's, you know, there's a couple sides of that coin, man, and I can argue both sides. I'm a union president. Hell, I can argue any damn thing. But clean time is important, but sometimes those of us with clean time, we mix it up with recovery. And the two are synonymous, but not always together at the same time, you know? But my clean time has gotten me through some things. And, you know, it does mean a lot. Clean time does mean a lot. I want to, on this change thing, though, I don't know, Jimmy got me talking about heart attacks, so if you ain't had one, keep coming back. Don't change nothing. You'll get one. I had a diet that I really, truly loved of cheeseburgers, and I would go get these checkups, and they would tell me, man, you got to change the way you eat. I'm like, maybe you got to change the way you eat, dude. I don't got to change the way. I love cheeseburgers. And so my daughter, my youngest daughter, who she's one of us but not here yet, she graduated from high school. And the family always says it was such a stunning blow to us that's what really created my heart attack, because the night that we had her graduation party, that night at midnight, I woke up. I mean, I went to bed about 11 o'clock, you know, it was an excellent day. I get up about midnight, and I got this pain in my shoulder. And so I'm thinking, oh, damn, man, I guess I'll go to the bathroom and have a cigarette. You know, that's a good idea. So I go to the bathroom and I have a cigarette, you know, and I go back to bed, and you know, that ain't too bad. It was this shoulder, too, which really freaks me out. But so I get up the next morning, and I go to work. And I go to work, and I work all day, and I come home, and I say, you know, Debbie, I got to go see the chiropractor, man. I got a pain in my shoulder. So off we go to the chiropractor, and I walk in. I've been going to the chiropractor for many years, and I sit down with the chiropractor, and he puts a blood pressure cuff on me. okay, this is something different. And he goes, man, you got to go to the hospital right now. So, chiropractors, they ain't into, like, doctors, So I knew something was really up. So I cruise into the hospital, and they do a blood test on me. And they come back, and they say, you've had a heart attack. Man, what the hell do you know? I said, how you know that, man? We took your blood. Well, I was negotiating drug testing language at the time. And one of the big sticking points was split samples, because if you get busted the first time, we want to have another reason for you to get off. So I told the guy, well, you better go take another test. So he did, and he come back and he said, you're an idiot and you've had a heart attack. So they put me up in this room, man, and by now it's like 10 o'clock at night. And I'm hungry as hell, man. So I'm in ICU, got all this oxygen and shit. And I send them off to McDonald's, man. And they come back with a quarter pounder with cheese and an order of fries. And the doctor, cardiologist guy, what are you doing? I said, well, dude, I figure you're going to change my life drastically. So, just one more. And I'm talking about, I do this thing. At that time, I had, 15 years, at the time. I had 15 years. So change isn't something I accept, okay? I don't accept it. But once I get enough pain, and sometimes it does take bigger boards than 2x4s, but stick around, please. Stick around. That's our message. Our message is hope, and the promise of freedom. And the only way you can get that is to go through this shit, don't pick up the first one, and keep coming back. And when you get through it, share that success. Because we need to share the success in Narcotics Anonymous, okay? We need to share the success. And I'm going to share one little thing. I'll get the hell out of here. I'm a dope fiend. Bona fide, certified, qualified. I do not need to tell you that. I need to tell me that, okay? I serve on these committees, and I got picked, and I don't know why. I always say it. I got picked to serve on this committee in Washington, D.C. And I said it's because the president of my council must be pissed off at somebody, so he put me on the committee. But as a result of really, I forced. I'm not using the right word. Everything that I have has been given to me as a result of staying clean in Narcotics Anonymous. Everything. The bad, the good, and I give thanks to Narcotics Anonymous for that. And I get to Washington, D.C. to represent a lot of people. And I was just so overwhelmed with gratitude for that it's just amazing. It continues, that more will be revealed thing, it will be revealed. And now I just roll with the flow and I let it happen. On my way to D.C., I got pulled over by the FBI 2 blocks from the hotel. So, as good as I was feeling about going to D.C. to do all this, the FBI is out there telling me, look, dude, man, we know you're there, So I didn't know they had uniforms. Did you guys know that? Yeah, they have uniforms. They have like cops, really cops. I met them. But, here is the freedom. I met the FBI 2 blocks from my hotel. I want to tell them my turban's at home. I want to tell them that, but I thought this guy don't look like he's got a sense of humor. But it ended up that the freedom today is I got pulled over by the FBI, and I left. And I didn't have to go anywhere, and I didn't have to call nobody, and he was as confused as I was by the time he left me. So, if you're new around here, please keep coming back. Don't use. And share it with us. I love you. Thanks.
My name is David. I'm an addict. I have a sponsor in my head. He's not the guy that I have as a sponsor today. He's one of my first sponsors, one that was my drill sergeant one. He's not a drill sergeant anymore, but the one in my head still is. And I can remember one of the many times I was just stuck in my recovery and not really, working on anything. You know, it's like one of these deals with, you know, when it's raining, I can't work on the roof, and when it ain't raining, the roof don't need fixed. It was one of those times, and I wasn't very comfortable not moving forward. At the same time, I wasn't in a lot of pain either, not moving forward. And you know, there's a big part of me when he would be like, you know, talking about step work and other things, in my head was just going, "Fuck you," and thinking things like, you know, why can't I have a moment of peace and just kick back and enjoy my recovery, which I wasn't doing. You know, I was just not, you know, being busy. And I don't know whether he was able to hear those voices coming out my ear or something, because I wasn't admitting them. I wasn't saying them to him, but he would say things that would respond to them. And one of them he said that really nailed me was that, it was a spin on the idea that this is a program of change. And that is that, you know, change is coming, no matter what. You know, the question is, what do I want to guide that change today? It's like I was pissed, you know, because you know, I didn't come in here with a whole lot of broad spectrum of feelings. You know, there was you know. I didn't know anger, I knew rage, and then the rest was just good and bad. You know, I felt good or I felt bad, or I felt just rage, you know. And I only had a few tools in how to deal with that, you know. Yeah, and for the most part today, I still fall back more than anything else on, you know, stick my head in the sand or pull out a wrecking ball. You know, those are the two main tools that I have by habit, you know. It has to do with wanna and don't wanna. When it comes to like wanting to make something nice in my life, I'll complicate the hell out of it. I'll bring out all kinds of fancy tools, you know. I'll just go at it with all kinds of overcomplicated, over-analytical, hey, let's do this and that, and hey, I've never seen one of those before. But when it comes to dealing with something I don't want to look at and I'm uncomfortable with, you know, God, it's amazing how much I'll fall back on the fact that, you know, I'm a really great survivor, and I'll just ride shit out, you know. You know, I'll be in a rut and I'll tell myself it's a groove, you know. Yeah. Yeah, and I know the difference between a rut and a groove is for the most part just a shift in attitude, one way or the other. You know, a year ago I quit my job after just sitting in it far too long. It's one of the, you know, I've been in relationships where I knew, not just, you know, from in my mind, but everyone telling me, why are you in this relationship? I've stayed in relationships for years after I knew I didn't want to be in it. You know, and same thing with jobs. You know, for the most part, the only time I've ever gotten a new job, I was moving toward a job I wanted, and you know, I left a job after. And it was rough. My first year of marriage, I didn't get my first I didn't get to be home for my first anniversary. I was in an atmosphere of people that just were so negative. We had like a little pond like this where there were geese in the parking lot, and people would run over them on the way to work. You know, this is just not the kind of thing that, you know, I've opened my spirit today, and I'm susceptible to what I put myself around. That's why I got, you know, I'm careful with my boundaries in, you know, this place. You know, it was really hard for me to finally let go of that job. I was waiting for something to get better. Yeah. And when I first quit, I was in a groove, man. It was like, freedom. You know, I'm moving away from something instead of towards something, so it's scary. But so nice to go from coming home, seeing my wife in bed, and getting up and leaving while she's still asleep. You know, I got to spend time with her. You know, I was in a groove, man. Well, you know, now it's become a rut. And I'm really scared to do much about that. I don't have family of origin issues now. So much of it to me, really does have to do with the whole thing about don't rock the boat, and don't deal with anything right now that makes me uncomfortable. Just stay inside my little comfort zone. Well, guess what? A year ago, there was this much of the world that I was comfortable in and I was familiar with. As I've become less involved with other areas of the world, they became less familiar. There's meetings that I stopped going to that just the thought of going to makes me uncomfortable. Coming here was tough this time because I kind of had the same feeling about coming to We Grow with Love that I have when I think about going to a high school reunion, which I've never done. My comfort zone's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And I'm not doing nothing to change nothing. Yet something's changing. So I've been trying to get to different meetings, branch out a little bit, be part of my family and dealing with some of their crises, but not going off and fixing them. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. I don't have to abandon them to have some space. There's people in the fellowship who, I feel so drained when I'm around them. Well, okay. How if I, what do I do when I'm around them? Maybe there's something I can change there. I'm using the Serenity Prayer a lot lately to help me, with this whole fear of change thing. To me, my addict way of looking at it is that's the two extremes. Serenity to accept means, be the ostrich, bury my head in the sand, fuck it. Courage to change is the wrecking ball. Okay, get this out of my way, get it over with, get it dealt with, so I can move on. Those are my just too dang extreme. So I'm trying to look for gentler lessons today, gentler approaches to stuff. Stuff that things that made sense at one point in my recovery when I was closer to the basics. Stuff that I used to know, but now I've gotten out of the habit of doing. Man, just starting with the basics again. Serenity Prayer and meetings, I didn't stop going to meetings, but man, I got into a rut. And, I'm glad I'm breaking out of it. It feels a little better. That's all I got.
No one else wants to share, we can close.